Good afternoon, President Tan, Professor Dai, and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jiansheng. I'm the director of PolyU Academy for Interdisciplinary Research. I would like to welcome all of you to this pair distinguished lecture series. So I would like to invite President Tan to introduce today's speaker, Professor Dai Jiansheng. Professor Tan, please.
Professor Dai Jiansheng, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to today's distinguished lecture, which is organized by PAIR, the PolyU Academy for Interdisciplinary Research. This topic, of course, embedded intelligence in robotics is, of course, a very important topic, or in some way a very fashionable topic. So it's great to see so many of you come to this lecture. A few months ago, I was at the Southern University of Science and Technology as a member of their International Advisory Committee. So the university, brought us to visit one lab on the campus, and this only lab was the lab run by Professor Dai Jiansheng on robotics. So obviously, I was quite impressed by the laboratory, and the fact that the university picked his laboratory should mean something. So I decided to, ask him to come here and share his work with us, because this area of robotics is also important to PolyU. And today, of course, we have our professor in robotics, Professor Zhang Dang, who is here, and he told me that the two of them actually share some similar research interests. So at this moment, Professor Dai is a chair professor at the Southern University of Science and Technology, and the director of the SUSTAC Institute of Robotics. Now, he is a pioneering figure in the field of reconfigurable mechanisms, or its subfield called the metamorphic mechanisms. This metamorphic mechanisms proposed by Professor Dai and his colleagues is a concept inspired by origami, if you've heard of this, and the folding of packaging cartons. In the domain of robotics, this gives robots the unique capability to change their own shape and structure to meet the needs of various applications. So he was in the UK initially at King's College London, and has worked there for more than 30 years by now. I think he's still partially attached to King's College. But in 2020, after 30 years, more than 30 years in UK, he decided to return to China and join the SUSTAC from King's College to dedicate himself to the development of the nation's new quality productive forces. Professor Dai has published over 700 peer-reviewed papers and 7 monographs, and created core technologies that have attracted significant investment and are widely used. This includes EMMA, which means expert manipulative massage automation, a robot deployed in Singapore, China, and the US to provide traditional Chinese medicine massage, Tuina, as well as Arbot, arm rehabilitation robotic technology, which is a robot for ankle rehabilitation. So Professor Dai's impactful contributions have been recognized with many awards from organizations such as the American Society of Mechanical Engineers and the International Federation for the Promotion of Mechanism and Machine Science. He is a fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering and a member of Academia Europaea, and a fellow of many other organizations and societies. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our distinguished speaker, Professor Dai Jiansheng. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President Tang, Thank you for invitation to come to this I'm honored to attend a fair distinguished lecture, and particularly to come to PolyU, the world top universities. So as our President Teng mentioned, I have been in England for over 30 years, 35 years, at King's College London from last century. In 2022, mid-2022, I came to Southern University of Science and Technology and still hold my office at King's College London. So my talk is about metamorphosis, reconfiguration, intelligence in mechanisms and robotics. So we all know AI is rapidly developing in the world, particularly artificial intelligence with the emergence of ChatGPT and DeepSeek, so many software. So we see rapid advances in AI. So how could robot structure change? If we look into traditional robotics, just focusing on the hands. So they just simply add fingers on the top of a plate. So the palm is rigid. So we need to make it more human-like. So that's the problem. So if we look into the trend from the first robotics, first industrial robot in 1958, until now, we see artificial intelligence is growing fast. However, robot structure remain the same with a big gap in the end. And how could we cope with the changing environment and the changing demands? We need to make revolutionize of the robot. So in such case, let's look into nature. So nature is varying, and I just look at articles say 20 billion types of different species, different insects. So we see in nature, they have a dimensional evolution, they have an incremental evolution, reconfigurable, they have a metabolism, and then hollow metabolism or hemi-metabolism. So there's complete metamorphosis and incomplete metamorphosis in nature. So if we look into geology term, say all the environment and the core and the roid, and they are changing with the selection. In such case, we see metamorphic is a that means changing and more with a morphosis, and morphosis is a form. So changing different forms into a new structure. If we look into this puma, so on the left-hand side is a hemi-metabolism. So that's incomplete metamorphosis. And in the right is a hollow metabolism. So metamorphosis is a changing of the say cells or organism from one type to a different type. So that gives you evolution of body structure. And we look into this in the other sense, say for rocks, they are under temperature or physical change, they are presenting all the changes. If we look into the design, there's a metamorphosis in design. So you look into this Da Vinci Museum. On top, that's the model, the metamorphosis. So that's metamorphosis in the nature. Let's look into metamorphosis in arts. So origami art, and you look into those fancy origami that was taken by myself in 1996. So all the perfume packs with all sort of different packs, different shapes, try to attract customers. However, for those origami, they have a different shape and they can change shape from one type to a different type. We see this from paper and folded into triangular origami. And so in that case, that was 1996. I was in Unilever. So whenever I went to my office, my desk is a pack of all the origami cartons. So my task then is try to do dextral robots to fold origami. So my first instance try to see if these origami can be transferred into any mathematical model. So in such case, if we take one corner of origami and we map it into a linkage, so the creases can be mapped into joints, the paper can be mapped into a link, that's 5-bar links. If we add open chains, that gives you another mechanisms. So we see the mechanism, the metamorphosis in nature and the metamorphosis in origami, they are changing the shape. We can see the other art. So that's the charge linkage. The charge linkage is only cut from a cube. So you cut the top off, you drop the bottom, you leave the middle chain, and that's a 6-bar linkage. I produced this on my desk in 2002, and we can see if we draw those links in terms of joints and links, we can see the brick heart, that's a cubic to charge. They are changing the links. If we take this link 3, 4, that's the red line, and the link 3, 4 virtually gives you a rule surface. So that's a rule surface from angle 0 to pi, from pi to 2 pi. And to complete the whole cycle, to cut cross all 2 circles. So you see the links here from geometry to mathematics to kinematics and mechanisms. In such cases, I think at 2012, we went to Cambridge, we tried to identify this C60 structure. So all the structure could be representing a changing structure of a robot. So we see currently environmental change, variable environments, and variable tasks. So we need multi-degree freedom, we need multi-function, we need multi-configurations. So in such case, we need dexterous, we need flexible, we need sensible to generate a new linkage, a new structure. So that was in 1998, I proposed metamorphic mechanisms and now becomes metamorphic principle in robot structure. So in such a case, the robot structure can change from one type to a different type. So I received the only paper awards at that time. So that's a biennial conference. And if we look into human transformation in the past millions of years, and if we look into full industrial revolution since 18th century, so they are changing in a space of time, but can we do this change just in a second from one type to a different type? So that's the metamorphosis. That's the metamorphic principle which changes the structure just in a second to adapt to environments. So in such case, this change of robots can meet efficiency, energy saving, and economy. So reach 3E. That's a biological evolution. So I think in 2000, I was invited by academician Qi Xianzhang to Beijing University of Aeronautics. And then we try to translate metamorphic mechanism into Chinese. So we see met is a multiple and supermorphic is a form. Metamorphic is a changing form of cells, of organisms, and organs. So in such a case, we pick up a word, Chinese word as a 变, means multiple change. 胞 means organism cell, so 变胞, so 变胞机构. So we look into this natural and structural change evolution, and say this Yang from Jiansheng, and we see this Si Zhang, and we see Jiu Baozidi, who proposed following this principle. He proposes the metamorphic gripper, and we have actually proposed a metamorphic origami, and particularly this year, Imperial College, Merkel Craig just published a paper on metamorphic area robots. So metamorphic principle leads to reconfigurability of robots to adapt to the environment. So if we look into 2009 in the chart, so I started this IEEE International Conference on Reconfigurable Mechanism and Robots. That's 2009 and 2012, 2015, 2018 in Delft in Netherlands, and 2021 in Toronto, 2024 last year in Chicago. So if we look into 150 years development of mechanisms, we go back to the world first over-constrained mechanism that was proposed by Sarrats and Bennett linkage proposed by Cambridge Electro Bennett. And 1927 is a Bricard, that's 6 links, Charles and Waldron. So can we generate a mechanism which can cross over all the mechanisms? So that's the metamorphic mechanism which can combine Waldron, Bricard, Serial, Bennett, and Bennett spherical. So evolve from different classical mechanism to generate a changeable topology mechanisms. So if we look into current and different development of metamorphic mechanism in all the robots, and in the world. And we currently have a metamorphic parallel mechanism that's all by other people in different continent. Metamorphic origami mechanism and metamorphic deployable mechanism, metamorphic tensegrity, and metamorphic compliant mechanism. Also in terms of different robots, different hands, and different metamaterials, and they all use this metamorphic structure, which change the structure, change the type to meet different demands in all the robotic area. So if we look into the history of evolutionary robotics, that was proposed in 1994 by Floriano. So currently, IEEE lists evolution robotics as a future cutting edge research. So in all the evolutionary robotics in the past 30 years, there are two routes. One route is a main route focusing on algorithm evolution. And from 1998, I tried to create another route on structure evolution. So we need a structure evolution added with an algorithm evolution. In such case, we can reach the truly evolutionary robotics in the near future. So if we look into, I think that this slide was produced by Zhao Jie of MOST, Ministry of Science Technology. So he suggested in 2030, all intelligent robotics and intelligent robots have to have the characteristics of a metamorphism or bionic. So for the 5 years or 10 years. So for all the metamorphoses we see from the nature and from the arts and from the structure, and because of the changing environment and changing demand, pressing demands, we need change of the structure of a robot. So as such, we have a theory to support metamorphosis. So we created this biological modeling of robots. So in such case, for the design, is a similar way for biological selection or biological evolution for theoretical. And in origami from arts, selected is a reconfigurability from origami. And we see this particularly in changing. If we see the right-hand side, the graph, in such case, you have each line represents a configuration. So you have a multi-configuration because of the structure change and the degree of freedom change. So in such case, they have an intersection. And those intersections are the bifurcation points of multiplication. So in such cases, in such a multiplication, how do you go to line A or line B or line C? So that's the synthesis of design problem, design issue. So in such case, we integrate this higher order Lie bracket to select the right path. And in the meantime, in other way, people are using artificial intelligence, machine learning here to choose the correct line. No matter artificial intelligence, no matter this LLM, we need structure change to match the thinking, to match the software. So that's we use here. I use this higher order Lie bracket to pick up, to identify the right path for changing in multiplication. And this is for 3-link manipulator in different forms. So you can see in the chart in the right-hand side, the different forms and different structure change. As such, okay, I think this is a mirror image. So right here, it should be left here, okay, on the top. All right, so I work with the French, this French expert, Professor Gogou, and try to establish in the past 20 years of all the methodology for reconfiguration, for changing the structure. So we have a physical way to change. We have a mechanical way to change. We also have this light or heat, a different thermal way to change the structure. So in such cases, we see, we talk about this metamorphosis from origami, and we see that's the origami line. So if we look into number 4, that's 2006. And then in the previous 10 years, we are dedicated into origami structure. So we presented origami mechanism in 1998, and then we present a lot of different origami type of mechanisms from different packs. And in 2010, we look into 5. That's the US National Science Foundation started origami engineering. And then we look into number 12. So they use this origami tube assembly. And number 16, GME Pig uses melee robots. And if we look into end 2023, so that's the Merkle Craig created metamorphic aerial robots. So we can see the principle of evolutionary morphology and metamorphism from art inspiration to biology and to structure change to create 3E, so efficiency, energy saving, and economy. So as such, we have a mathematical principle for this metamorphosis. We try to, because all the robots, they have a joint. Say, if your wrist normally is represented by 3 joints, and the elbow by 1 joint. So for each joint, you have axes, you have axis. So with each axis is a line in space. So if we study line representation, we can see the geometry and the kinematics, dynamics of a robot. So a line in space can only be represented by 6 coordinates. So we call Pluker coordinates. So the first 3 normally is position, the last 3 is orientation. So in such case, this fits into Lie algebra. So in such case, I look into all the classical operators and the mathematical models. So we go back to 1830. So the PhD thesis of a French mathematician, Charles, generated. He said in all the motions, he can use just 1 motion to represent all different motions. And this 1 motion is a long rotation along a line and translation about lines. So that's the line motion represents all the motions. And then if I also look into Rodriguez 4 parameters, that's in Rodriguez' PhD thesis published in 1840. And virtually his 4 parameters is in a way exactly the 4 parameters from Hamilton. So Hamilton generated his 4 parameters in 1843, and Rodriguez 4 parameters. So these 4 parameters gives the motion definition. So in such case, they are linked together, and I look into Clifford dual operator in 1873 and dual. So in such case, I wrote monograph that's scalar algebra and Lie group or Lie algebra. In such case, to link all the different formalism to give a trend and the intuition between all the mathematics. So that's, I think when I wrote my book in 2010, I was in Italy. So after the dinner, after the steak in steakhouse, I was full of inspiration. So in such case, I have a pen, but I don't have paper. I took this napkin and tried to check my thought to see if this is correct. So you see in A, that's in the left, that's Lie group conjugation to Lie algebra. That in 4x4 matrix. So when I did this 4x4, I thought, why not I check the 6x6? So you see the right-hand side C is the 6x6 Lie group conjugation on the algebra. And then you can see the remaining, say, equation star top and the final equation here. They are exactly the same, but in different types. So that proves this conjugation can be in any dimensions. And if you look into, in such cases, when I did conjugation check, I try to see this also means Lie group can act on Lie algebra. So on B, on the right-hand side top, so this Lie group acting on Lie algebra. So all the results come to the same conclusion. So I quickly catch my ideas and wrote down my thought. So I took this 1% inspiration, and continuously I try to check a Lie bracket. So Lie bracket in the left-hand side, that's 4x4. And then after 4x4, I thought, how do I do the 3x3? I check on the right-hand side, wrote down the 3x3. And then on the left bottom side, I check a Lie bracket in 6x6. So all come to the conclusion. So the conclusion 1, a joint representation. Conclusion 2 and conclusion 3, both are equivalent. So in such case, I created an equivalent theorem. And then that's some in my book. So after 2011, I generated my English original. I spent 3 years to translate into Chinese. So because the translation is very hard, and it covers 3 big subjects. So robotics, mechanisms, and mathematics. So I need to get the term right in both English and Chinese. So section, this book 42 is in this China higher education press. So in the mathematical foundation theory. So book 42 was published in 2014. And after 3 years, it was sold out. So I do a revision I did. In 2020, I published book 70. So I think still going off. So this year I finished the second edition, third edition. So we'll be out end of this year to become book 101. So that was in the book, I think the first book on this theory, on this Lie group, Lie algebra is in 1994 by Marie Lee Sastre. Lee is Zhexiang Li, and then Selig and Shrek Zhang, and my book. My book is particularly link school algebra, or people call school theory, into Lie group, Lie algebra. I built a bridge between school algebra and Lie group, Lie algebra. And that was in the modern science, mathematics foundation, so book 42 and book 70. I was the only engineer publish a book in these this mathematical theory book, foundation books. So we see evolutionary robotics, and we see how we apply our methodology, how we apply this principle of metamorphosis into a real robot. So we see this evolutionary robotics. I said in my earlier slide, we have a line from 1994 till now. There are two routes. One route is evolutionary computer. So computation evolution. The other route is evolutionary structure. So if we talk about now, people are so enthusiastic on this embodied and intelligence. But embodied intelligence has two parts. The first part is on software, the second part on hardware. So embodied intelligence try to make a body changeable, adaptable to match what you thought, to match the intelligence. So that's a real meaning of evolutionary robotics. So we actually designated this in the next 10 years. Evolutionary robotics will be a cutting edge, a forefront research. And then we have to drive for evolutionary morphology and mechanism analysis. So that's what we established. I think that's in 2018. That's the metamorphic robots. So we call origami, from origami idea. So origami walker. So we give name to origaker.
南方科技大学开发的新型类生物机器人，它能够在不需要拆卸和重新组装的情况下，实现爬行动物、节肢动物和哺乳动物等不同生物形式的转换。它能缩成一团，还能钻进狭窄通道、攀爬阶梯等障碍。
1 million viewing, and we received the award for 2022 as the Me Transaction Best Paper. So we can see that's the second generation of robots. So the robot has many sensors and laser, radar, and also infrared and 3D perceptions. And if we go back, I think now from this year, this 中国矿业大学 is going to put this robot into the well. So for any disaster happening in the well, for this rescue work. And we created this air and land robot that received the first awards last year in Washington, D.C. for robotic design. So we see this, all the robots try to do this environmental adaptability and try to match this changeable metamorphic organism. And we have evolutionary adaptive arm and limbs. So particularly, so the walker, the leg becomes arm and limbs. We see, also we apply this algorithm into this humanoid control. So that was produced in 2012. My postdoc in Italian Institute of Technology tried to, particularly in the impedance control, in such a case for balance walk. That's early, I think, 13 years ago. But now we develop more. So if we look into this still 2012, home van is produced by Darwin Corwell in Italian Institute of Technology. And my student is joining to do this control algorithm. So that's really humanoid in Europe. And we see structure intelligent humanoid. So that's the humanoid generator in the lab of SUSTEC. I lead.
小谷，我在。你好呀。你好呀，欢迎来到南方科技大学机器人研究院，很高兴见到您。
介绍一下你自己。
当然可以，我是南科盘古，是南方科技大学机器人研究院研发的第一款人形机器人。和我握个手吧。好呀，很高兴认识你。看看我手上拿的是什么。
So it can recognize all the.
你手上拿着一个橙子。
Now the interaction is very quick for the second generation.
好的，摆个点赞的姿势，来和我自拍一张吧。
And particularly when you ask questions, they speak while they are speaking, they are thinking. So speaking plus thinking, and to make a speed quick.
再见了。
And interruption for the second generation.
期待下次再和您见面。
And they can do all the sort of work. Say take a pictures, take a group photo.
帮我们拍张大合照吧。好的，没问题，大家都过来吧，站到我面前，让我来为大家拍一张大合照。请大家看镜头，准备好喽，摆个 pose， 3、2、1，茄子。
Okay, and then join this graduation ceremony. And my student interaction with people. And we look into this metamorphic hand, because my first slide showing the robot hand, all rigid palm, but with fingers. And this has a dextral palm, and this came from my early PhD study. My PhD from 1990 to 1993, and that's my PhD thesis on title, School Image Space Application to Robotic Grasping. That's from British Library. We can see, I think I created this sensors and grippers. So with 6 lines, it's like a tensegrity. So how line cannot support any compression. So I added the center piece with a strong spring. So all the lines are pre-tensioned. So in such case, we can measure all. I was surprised by this slide. That was a slide I borrowed from January when a Harvard professor came to King's. He showed this slide, and this slide was my work, and that's my paper published in 1996. And he said that's the earliest elasticity integrated into Jacobian matrix. So you can see elastic compatibility matrix and task range and stiffness. So in such case, you see the right-hand side bottom. So when you add load, the old pretension will add it into this matrix. So still, we go back to this origami and then to I added this open chain. And what open chain gives you, so all the change you can see in the matrix transformation. So what open chain gives you, that's a metamorphic hand with a palm changeable, reconfigurable. So that's that's in BBC, and they use this palm changeable metamorphic chain palm to show people. And then that was produced in 2023, and now we generate 7th generation. I can't remember how many generations. So the latest generation has more flexibility and user for humanoid. So that's the latest generation. I think after this generation, we generated another generation with a smaller size. And my student set up this in Shenzhen, DH Robotics. So from 2016, the first company is doing end effector for all the operation. I think I don't have much. So I use this in European project. So metamorphic hand interaction with kindergartens children. And we see this embodied intelligence equals AI, artificial intelligence plus structural intelligence. So that's like a Chinese Qigong. One is reconfigurable, that's the hardware. The other is control intelligence, the software. So hardware plus software, that's a real embodied intelligence. And you see the artificial intelligence and structural intelligence. Yeah. And we just have a quick go through some videos on the healthcare. So my students set up a company in Singapore. So in such case, that's in Italy. So in this case, for ankle rehabilitation patient, but he extended to lower limb. So while doing the application and limb rehabilitation, the patient can play on screen for the games. So as such, I think we generate this Springer published book on analysis and synthesis of compliant parallel mechanisms. So I was talking about some robotic massage. President Trump mentioned about this massage. So you can see the massage. So when robotic massage, we started from 2002 with the THK in Japan, and we try to use different energy track to represent palm massage and finger massage. My student and Dr. Jiansheng they set up 11 trainings so they can represent change of angles and applying force. Such all these applying force, all the massage, all the people. Also this principle of metamorphosis and reconfiguration with automatic changing lines for current industry. So industry, for only change type, they have to so many points. But in metamorphosis, in this algorithm or our new structure change, it will be quickly adapt to the new product. I think I shall finish in 2 minutes. So you can see this axis at this chart. Horizontal adaptability, vertical productivity. If you reach higher adaptability, volume of production is very, very low. If you have high productivity, the versatility is typically low. So how do we do? Bring out to the top right, that's reconfigurable manufacturing systems. So higher adaptability and higher productivity. As such, several lines, so by Steven set up DH robotics. So the reconfiguration apply to the grippers, so to different production, different lines. And now we are collaborating with this Foxstone. That's applying to optical and nano. So I just quickly go through this. So in such case, we can see this is historical review of metamorphism, say from in Europe, is doing all this serving robots, and origami in America, and theory development in China on this metamorphism. I mentioned about in 2009, I started this international conference. And that's the first 2009 in London. So the president of King's College London and vice president all attend. And then 2012 in Tianjin, and with Ken Wozong, Jiansheng, and Jus Herder from Netherlands, Larry Harwell from Brigham University, and Darwin Cowell, Brian Davis. That's 2012, and then 2015, we see in Beijing, 2018 in Delft, Netherlands. So we see this Guinness record, the first conference dinner held in church. So 2018 and 2021 is a pandemic. So Toronto, but we held in line. And last year was 2024 in Chicago. So next edition, 2027, we'll go back to London. So close to end is very slow to, okay. So you see all the, and then I also held this parallel international conference on parallel mechanisms and robots. So each 6 years. So next year is the 4th edition, 6 years. Will be held in Abu Dhabi. So welcome people to join. Call for paper will be out in next week. All right, just quickly show that's that's ASME DED Mechanism Robotics Award. If we look into 1997, Hartenberg, we also, if we do robots, we know DH robotics, DH parameter. So D is a derivative H is Hartenberg. So Denwitt is a Hartenberg student. And we see Vijay Kumar, Duffy, and Crossley. So we have Crossley Award. And then this machine design award starting from 1959, we see 1985 is Shigley. So Shigley's book is on machine design, mechanism design. That covers mechanisms, hydraulic, noise, and vibration, and all the gear systems, all the machine design. So we see Shigley, Duffy, and Wardron, and Sunil Agarwal 2016 from Columbia. Difficult to open. So SUSTEC, Institute of Technology, covers 6 colleges and 14 departments. And we have 10 research topics, directions. So we have all the including President Teng, EPFL, Jamie Peck. And I'm also currently editor-in-chief of Robotica and subject editor of mechanism machine theory. So welcome to submit your papers to Robotica and mechanism and machine theory. And I published this 40th anniversary edition of Robotica. So I thank my PhD students. So I just met this UCL, Helge Udiman, and that's the top 9 in the world. And King's College Professor Spirakos, and Purdue University, Domingan. Yes. I also thank my students in industry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Dai, for the very interesting presentation for this a new world for us because lots of transformation for the robots. So now it's the time for the question and answer. So let's see any questions from the audience first.
Thank you, Professor Dai. How many years do you expect to happen for the miniaturization for the metamorphic robots, say to put that into microsurgery, say vascular operations?
Okay, how many years do I expect which will be realized in surgical? I think starting now, I have a collaboration with the Beijing University people, and we try to do this to apply metamorphic structure in nano robots. And currently, nano robots doesn't change their body. So we need body structure change. So when body structure change, they can adapt to a different degree of freedom, different topology, and different requirements. So I expect it will be 5 or 7 years. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for your presentation. Sorry that I'm an assistant professor out of robotic domain. I'm from construction and buildings.
Oh, great.
So yeah, so my question may be not that expert, but I'm curious about why the robotics now, as far as we can see in some social media, are more the trend is to the human-like robotics. I'm very curious about that because I cannot see much application scenarios of that. And some function features like a walk or grab something. Yeah, existing robot dogs or arms can do that. Why we spend such money and attention to the human-like robotics?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for questions. That's a very good question because the same question was asked last week by Jamie Peck from EPFL. She said, "Oh, Professor Dai, how's your view on the current humanoid robots? I think that's this wave is a high wave, and then that's a peak, and then they have a valley, similar to artificial intelligence. I just discussed last week in London. And so artificial intelligence now is a peak. Everything should be AI. No AI, nothing. However, I think there will be a bubble burst. In the end, they're red. However, like a beer, when bubble bursts, they still have some core, some fundamental issue left in the bottle. So I think similar to humanoid, that's a lot development. However, this development, the particular for humanoid, because it's cross-disciplinary, cross ranges. So every subject can be participating, can be part of it. So that's one benefit for this humanoid. And also humanoid can be presenting everywhere, and it's a skillful like a Zhaji. However, I think I told my students, now the fundamental theory, fundamental science have not been discovered, identified from humanoid development. There are plenty scientific issues have to be discovered, to dig out. That's our task from our academic. So that's why humanoids are in companies, not much in academia world. But I expect, say, for this world, we have 20 billion organism type of species. So not only humanoid, because I just read an article on the plane. They said you will be surprised for the evolution. So you see human is the top of evolution, but the article said it's not. Maybe chimpanzee or other species might be superb. So they, depending on different environment, different requirements. So that's why I said metamorphosis, which require adapt to requirements to change. So in such case, in some cases you don't, humanoid cannot do, but dog can do. In some case, ocean animal can do, but human cannot do. So that's a combination will be the future. And metamorphosis will be the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, maybe I have a question for the because the okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Ask a question. Allow me to ask a question on top of the technology. So just like you mentioned, so the robotics research is a highly interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary area. So in your capacity as a director of the SASTEC Institute for Robotics Research, or probably more precise name, so how you manage and consolidate the research strengths from the different area? So I trust, so you got colleagues from the different department in your university. And also on the other hand, so university, I trust, facing very strong competition from the industry. How you attract and maintain the high caliber scholars in terms, for example, so industry may give them high pay. So how you keep them in your university?
Yeah. Thank you very much. So first question about cross-disciplinary. I do a lot of cross-disciplinary work. Say, my postdoc is doing this optical sensor, which you can sense up to 10 nanometers. Because I think that in robotics, particularly, you need to cover different area, it's a pure collaboration, a pure cross-disciplinary. One discipline cannot cover, say, mechanical cannot. You need computer science, you need chemist, you need physics. So all will be part of this work. So we established several platforms so people can collaborate. And we also have a lab for people to collaborate. The second question about the industry attraction, so yes, some people have to go to industry, and some people share their position in university and the industry. So I think such stack allowing to this dual. And now, but in the past, they don't allow to purely doing industry, but now they also have this professor for industry. Thank you.
Professor Fu.
Oh, yes.
Hey, Professor Dai, thank you so much for your wonderful talk. Yeah, I saw one of your slides showed that the technology trends for this robotics area. So I wonder, so from technology perspective, what disruptive technology should be developed to embrace or accommodate this technology trend?
Okay.
This is from technology perspective. From theory perspective, any theory, critical theory should be developed to support this.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think this our Zhang Kai just left. I think he mentioned about 热光电, and 事实上 everything is integrated. I think the current bottleneck for robots is a structure, but control and intelligence, LLM can be integrated, but you need a structure to adapt. You need structure to match. So now the brain is too well developed, but body has not. So that's, I think, the bottleneck. That's the breakthrough for structure change and structure evolution, and that needs our engineers to do. And I think that will be, and also the fundamental theory is the to integrate the higher theories, say Lie group, Lie algebra, and to the basic control. And my students are using this, say, this 8 coordinates of study coordinates study work, and for theoretical kinematics to integrate into LLM for the code writing. So I think that will be very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any more questions? No question. So, Professor Dai, oh, okay. So there's one student, yeah.
Professor, I found that your research on robot focus on structures and topology. So I wonder, what is your experience in abstracting nature structure, abstracting scientists' research from nature structures, and do you have some advice for us young people for abstracting nature structure?
Yes, I think nature is very important. Everything can be inspired by nature. I think I heard one people just mention, oh, I sent this to Tianliu. So Tan Tianliu, he said, if you encounter any problem, you can look into nature. So virtually, yeah. So the structural metamorphic virtually is extracting from nature, from biology. So biology, nature is changing structure, changing color, changing size, changing types, and this will be truly nature inspiration into a robot structure. Thank you.
More questions? Okay, yeah, over there.
Hi, Professor Dai. I have long admired your reputation, and I started my research from charge linkage too. Recently, I find some questions. There is conflict between the generalization and the specialization design of a mechanism. For example, we want to catch something, we cannot use just a single structure to grasp everything, such as soft things and rigid things. By the way, I think sometimes we face the question that we don't need too complex structure to meet our dimension.
Yes, I think so. The simpler, the better. That's all the I think the problem, the issue. The simpler, the better. Even for mathematics, if you produce a long solutions, the beauty of mathematics is simplicity and symmetry. So in the structure is the same here. So metamorphic is simplifying all the complex structure. So if we need 3 different types of robot, they can integrate all 3 types in one structure. So one structure, they can simply change the form, change structure, change topology to meet the demand. So in such case, I think a simpler still is the aim of all engineers, simpler and also meeting the demand. Thank you.
Any more? Okay, maybe I have a couple of questions for you, Professor Dai. First of all, I think the metamorphic robot and also the reconfigurable robot, lots of people, they mentioned the reconfigurable robot. So what's the difference? And also whenever you change the structure of the mechanism, so how to follow up with the control algorithm to those structure?
Great, good question. Thanks, Professor Zhang. So I think this metamorphic is self-changing. So the reconfigurable is I expanded from metamorphic to reconfigurable. I think reconfigurable contains something human doing, something manually integrated. Because I think when I proposed metamorphic in 1998, and then early this century, a lot of different mechanisms comes out, and some mechanisms just lock the motor. So that's a reconfigurable mechanism. It's not metamorphic. Metamorphic is gradually it's changing their structure using geometrical constraint, using kinematic constraint. So using constraint to change. So that's why I think from 2006, when I took a train with Vijay Kumar and Ken Waldron and Michael McCarthy to memorial service for Freud-Einstein in Columbia, I said I need to establish a conference the 3 years before. So 2009, I established the conference on international conference on reconfigurable mechanism robots. So more mechanisms, which is not only metamorphosis, which utilizing any manual change, any other changing method, but the core is all changed topology, changed structure.
Then how about the control algorithm?
Because control is also, I think, so that's the control. Also, if we look into the one graph in my PPT, so you have different lines, 30 lines. So on this structure, so they can change it to, say, 2 degrees freedom curve. They can change it to 3 degrees curve and different topology. So in such case, particularly in the bifurcation, multiplication point, you need to identify which point to go. So in such case, I have this higher order Lie bracket to check. And in the meantime, nowadays, people can use artificial intelligence here, machine learning here, so to guide to different structure, different lines.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the control.
Yeah, and also in your presentation, you mentioned the by combining the computational intelligence and also the structural intelligence, right? So I just wondering, where's the essence for this intelligence? located? Should focus on the something like decision making or something autonomous or something else?
Okay, great. Good point. So artificial intelligence, I think we have control intelligence. So control intelligence, like you said, to go to which way. The other is structure intelligence. Structure intelligence it is based on starting from design. So when you design, you need to have to predict any future change of a structure. So starting from design, and then structure intelligence is a structure can automatic change the structure to match the requirement. So it's a combination from structural intelligence, including design, control, and prediction and operation. That's all in structural and intelligence.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, and also the by the deep integration of the embodied intelligence and also the artificial intelligence. I just wondering, is it possible for the metamorphic robot can develop to the capability of the autonomous decision making for the structure more? It's called a morphology.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that possible for the structure or autonomously to make combine by itself?
Yes, yeah. So that's I think in such case we need material sciences.
Okay.
So we introduce the material and also the lights and opticals here. So in such a case, the mechanism we also can introduce a shape memory polymer and shape memory alloy. In such case, structure can adapt itself to meet the demands. So when you say in a hole or in a rough area, that's a different environment. So in such a case, sense back and then they change the structure. In such case, we have, so we carry out this all the work in our second generation metamorphic robots. And now we are submitting a leading paper. So everything is there. So they utilize all the LLM and multi-modal LLM and perception and then to make a structure change.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Dai. There's also some questions from the online, so maybe I read it.
All right.
It's written in Chinese, so I will read in the Chinese. 在嵌入式智能驱动的机器人系统中，针对实时运动控制，比如高精度轨迹跟踪、动态障碍物避障。场景如何权衡嵌入式硬件的算力约束与智能算法如模型预测控制、强化学习的复杂度。
Okay, so embedded computation and intelligent control in such case. So embedded intelligence. I think we had a collaboration with the Zhejiang University on image sensing. So in such case, we have embedded intelligence in the algorithm. So everything will be done in the algorithm. As long as your structure is intelligent enough, that means the structure can change, can match all the demand. As such, so intelligence, embedded intelligence can be integrated with artificial intelligence. So I think we did, we utilize several algorithms. So in such case, we have LLM, we have a multi-modal perception, and we create the software framework. So perception, artificial LLM embedded and the control. So basic control, we are using this C++ and Python. So in such case, we make immediately or just a split-second decision and then change the structure to go through different terrain, different holes and different rough area.
Okay, thank you. There's another question from the online. 在多模态嵌入式智能机器人，包括融合视觉、触觉、力觉等传感器的应用中，嵌入式系统如何实现多元异构数据的实时同步与融合推理？
Okay, so so the multi-modal is 多元，异构means a different structure. So multi-modal, we do say we have a voice input, so instruction, and we have a sensor, so infrared, and we have 3D depth camera, and we have a laser radar. So as such, we combine those three into one. So we created different models. So we have framework. One is the LLM. The second is a vertical LLM. So with a multi-modal. So in such case, we create an array in the control, embedded control. So this array will change. They will change its voice instruction and go through LLM to give a particular structure in the coding of this array. And then position-wise, we take this seven coordinates. So first three coordinates is Cartesian. The final four is quaternion. So quaternion, Cartesian position, quaternion orientation. So in such case, this is implemented, embedded with this LLM and converted code, so can be realized in the implementation.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So the one more question. For the biology always gave us the redundancy and also the self-healing for the but the engineering never gave us this type of chance. So I just wondering for the design of this metamorphic robot, how to prevent those single point failure, such in case there's a one point failure, then how to prevent?
Yes. So there are two types of failure. One is if you scratch. So if you just fail and scratch, and that can be used as material science for regenerated material science. The other is the system failure, so a structure failure. So that's a metamorphic, say, legs failure. So in such case, you can immediately sense this leg is failure, the other leg is compensate. So using different structure, so structure is a very important. Structure change is a clue here. So if a robot is falling down, so the structure change, so compensate the failing part. So that's why in this metamorphic robot, they can be dropped from a helicopter, and they can drop anywhere, and they can change its structure to make it stand up again. So that's a structure remedy. I see is structure remedy for compensation. The other is material remedy for compensation.
Okay, thank you so much. Although there are still lots of questions from the online or the audience because of the time limits, so we have to end here. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you
for the
So to express our appreciation to Professor Dai's lecture, prepare a plaque. Okay, this is our small souvenir for you. So thank you for your contribution to this lecture, especially for those who ask questions, and also for everyone who attending today's lecture. So this lecture is adjourned. Thank you very much.